Welcome to War Stories 24, the channel where real battles come alive. Here we tell the untold stories of soldiers, spies, survivors, and heroes from across the world. Whether it's courage in the trenches, betrayal in the shadows, or survival against all odds, every story you hear is true, raw, and unforgettable. Subscribe now and relive the history one war story at a time.
Story 1: The Bridge at Saint-Pierre, Ouade-Toues, 1944. Not every hero gets a statue. Some just get a bridge, a name, and a story that refuses to die. This is the story of Lieutenant Alan Pierce and the night he held the bridge at Saint-Pierre. Normandy, August 8th, 1944. The rain hadn't stopped for days. Mud soaked their boots, rifles jammed, and men whispered of home like it was a myth. Lieutenant Alan Pierce, 28, was leading 2nd Platoon, 119th Infantry, pushing deeper into German-occupied France. They were under orders to secure a small stone bridge just outside Saint-Pierre-sur-Dive. It wasn't much to look at, a single-arch bridge over a shallow river. But command said it was vital, the only route for tanks headed to Falaise. Intel claimed light resistance. Intel was wrong. As they approached through the trees, machine gun fire erupted from the far bank. 2 men dropped instantly. Alan pulled the rest behind a stone wall. MG-42s, at least 2, possibly more on the left. His sergeant, Martin Hale, 35, grizzled and blunt, muttered, "They're dug in good. Could chew us apart in minutes." Alan scanned the terrain. Open field, no cover. The bridge was a choke point. If they rushed it now, they'd all be cut down. "We wait until nightfall," Alan said. "Then we cross." The night assault. At 2:15 a.m., under a moonless sky, the platoon moved. Silently, carefully, through brush and black mud. Alan led the way, cutting through barbed wire with a trench knife. The plan: 2 squads cross under cover, flank the bunkers. Alan, Hale, and 4 others would hold the bridge from this side. The crossing team slipped into the river, wading waist-deep in silence. Then, a flare went up. Gunfire tore the night open. Bullets hissed past Alan's head. He returned fire blindly, yelling for cover. But the crossing team was pinned mid-river. Screams, splashes, chaos. Alan knew if the Germans destroyed the bridge, reinforcements wouldn't arrive. They had one chance. "We hold this damn bridge," he barked. "No matter what." The stand by dawn, they were down to 8 men. The Germans launched a counterattack. Grenades, machine gun bursts, mortar fire. Alan was hit in the shoulder but refused morphine. He propped himself against a sandbag, firing between curses. Next to him, Private Lewis, just 18, sobbed as he reloaded. Alan grabbed his helmet. "You hold this rifle or they come through us. And if they come through us, your buddies in the back die. Understand?" Lewis nodded through tears and kept firing. Hours passed. Smoke blanketed the air. The river ran red. At one point, Sergeant Hale shouted, "We're out of 30 cal rounds!" Alan looked at the corpse of a fallen comrade nearby, crawled over, took his ammo belt, and threw it to Hale without saying a word. Then, silence. The Germans had retreated, at least for the moment. Reinforcements. At 11:07 a.m., American Shermans rumbled down the road. Reinforcements had arrived. Alan collapsed against the bridge wall, exhausted, soaked in blood and sweat. A medic knelt beside him. "Sir, you need evac." Alan shook his head. "Not yet. Make sure they get across first." For aftermath. The bridge at Saint-Pierre was secured. It became a vital artery in the push to Falaise. Only 13 of the original 32 men in Alan's platoon walked away. He returned home in 1945, became a school teacher, and never once told his students what he did during the war. But the men who served with him, they never stopped telling the story. The bridge. Today, in a quiet French town, that stone bridge still stands. A bronze plaque reads, "In memory of Lieutenant Alan Pierce and the 2nd Platoon, who held this bridge so others could pass." Some men don't seek glory. They just hold the line when no one else will. That's why we remember Lieutenant Alan Pierce, not for medals, but for the bridge that still stands because of him.
Story 2. The Last Hill, Korea, 1951. The Hill. It was supposed to be just another assault. Hill 742, a snow-covered ridge deep in the Korean highlands. The Chinese held it tight, Machine guns, bunkers, overlapping fire. Several units had tried, most didn't return. Sergeant Jack McConnell, 25, from Iowa, had already seen too much. His squad was down to 9 men. One of them was Private Danny Price, just 19, new to combat, always scribbling in a little notebook. Reminded Jack of his brother back home. The night before the assault, Jack found Danny writing by flashlight. "What's that?" Jack asked. "My mom made me promise to write something every day," Danny replied. "Says it keeps me human," Jack smirked. "Is it working?" "Not sure," Danny said. "But I told her about you. That you look like someone who's already seen how this ends, but still cares." In the attack, they moved at dawn. Artillery opened the way, snow flew. But as they climbed, Chinese bunkers lit up the ridgeline. Gunfire cut through the fog. Corporal Vasquez went down fast. Jack pulled his men into a frozen ditch just below the summit. 6 left. The radio crackled. "Push forward." "Take the hill now." Jack looked around. His men were bleeding, outgunned, exhausted. The bunkers were too well defended. That's when Danny crawled beside him. "I'll go," he said. Jack stared. "What are you talking about?" "I can flank left. I've seen a gap in their fire. 2 grenades, I can clear it." Jack shook his head. "No way." Danny just smiled. "I'm not trying to be brave. I just want us to make it." The climb, Danny took off low and fast. Chinese guns roared, but Danny kept moving, darting between snowdrifts, crawling through blood and ice. Then boom, the first grenade went off. One bunker silenced. Seconds later, boom, another explosion. Silence. Jack jumped up. "Move." They charged the summit, cleared the remaining defenders in brutal close combat. Hill 742 was theirs, but Danny was gone. The letter Jack found him near the final bunker, his notebook still in his hand. Burned on the edges, one last page legible. "If I don't come back, tell my mom I wasn't brave. I was just trying to save my friends." Jack folded the notebook and took it home. The aftermath. Years later, Jack visited Danny's mother in Georgia. He handed her the notebook and said nothing. She read the last line, looked up, and said, "He always took care of others first, even as a boy. When Jack had a son in 1962, he named him Daniel."
Story 3. June 1953, Korean War Outpost. Harry was a god-forsaken hill in Korea, just 425 yards from the enemy's front lines. For months, the U.S. 15th Infantry Regiment had defended it. But as peace talks dragged on, Chinese forces decided to break the stalemate. Their plan? Overwhelm and crush Outpost Harry in a single night with a full-scale assault. Private First Class John Pittman was 19 years old from rural Alabama. He wasn't a hero, not yet. Just a kid who joined the army for a steady paycheck and some college money. That night, he would become part of one of the fiercest small unit stands in American military history. The air was too quiet. Radio chatter between outposts went dead. Then, around 10 p.m., the first shell landed. Then another and another. Artillery screamed down on the outpost like hell's own rain. The ground shook. Dirt and debris blasted the air. More than 88,000 rounds would fall that night. It was the most intense shelling many of those men had ever seen. But artillery was just the beginning. Thousands of Chinese troops, wave after wave, emerged from the shadows, screaming war cries and blowing whistles. They swarmed up the hillside like locusts. Their goal, take the hill at any cost. Inside the trenches, Pittman clutched his M1 rifle, heart pounding. "Hold the line," his sergeant screamed. Pittman fired into the darkness, barely able to see shapes moving through smoke and muzzle flashes. The Chinese kept coming, some were shot and kept crawling. Others fell and were replaced instantly. The Americans were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they had one advantage, desperation. They knew they couldn't retreat. If they lost the outpost, enemy artillery would have a straight shot at the key town of Chorwon. If Outpost Harry fell, the entire U.S. defensive line might collapse. So they held and they bled. A mortar shell exploded just feet from Pittman, sending shrapnel into his leg. He screamed but stayed conscious. He dragged himself into a deeper trench and kept firing. Next to him, Corporal Alvarez had a belt-fed Browning machine gun. The barrel glowed red from constant fire. Alvarez didn't stop until a grenade landed next to him. He threw his body over it and absorbed the blast. Dead. Just like that. By 2 a.m., half the American defenders were either killed or wounded. Pittman's squad was down to 4 men. The radio was destroyed. They were isolated. Then they heard it. tunneling. The Chinese had dug under the trench line and were trying to come up from below. Pittman grabbed a satchel charge, a bag packed with TNT, and threw it into the hole just as a Chinese soldier's head emerged. Boom. The explosion collapsed part of the tunnel, but the hill shook again and part of the trench caved in. Pittman was buried up to his waist in dirt. He clawed himself free. By 4 a.m., the Americans were running out of ammo. Bodies lay everywhere. The Chinese had taken half the outpost. Hand-to-hand combat broke out. Pittman was down to his bayonet. He stabbed, punched, and clubbed his way through attackers. Blood mixed with mud screams echoed. It wasn't a war, it was a slaughterhouse. Just when it seemed like the hill would fall, something changed. The counterattack came. Reinforcements from the 5th Regimental Combat Team stormed up the slope under withering fire, screaming, "Fix bayonets!" As they went, they fought their way through the chaos, pushing the Chinese back foot by foot. By dawn, the hill was still in American hands, barely. Of the 550 men who defended Outpost Harry that night, more than 350 were killed or wounded. It was one of the most lopsided fights in the war, and they held it. For 8 days straight, the Chinese attacked again and again. And each time, the Americans, sometimes replaced by Greek allies, held that miserable, blood-soaked hill. When it was over, Outpost Harry still stood, but it had cost everything. What happened next? PFC John Pittman survived the battle, though his leg was never the same. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions that night. He never liked talking about it. In his words, "I did what I had to. The guy next to me did more." Outpost Harry was later nicknamed the Hill of the Dead. And to this day, veterans remember it not for glory, but for the incredible courage and grit of ordinary men in impossible circumstances. This was War Stories 24. If this story moved you, like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more untold stories of real courage. Because history is more than dates, it's the blood, sweat, and choices of real people like you and me.